A very good evening to you. You are watching Newsfirst in Focus. This evening we are going to talk to Mr. Asela Lanka, a cybersecurity specialist who is in the studio with us. What are we going to talk to him about? Now, we know that several countries in the South Asian region as well as in the world have moved to using ENICs, Electronic National Identity Cards. Now, there was a debate, there was talk about this project being carried out in Sri Lanka as well. What we are trying to do here today is to identify whether these ENIC or ENICs are required in a country like Sri Lanka, whether there are advantages of bringing it and whether there are disadvantages of bringing ENICs. Good evening to you, Mr. Lanka.
Good evening, Chatu.
Thank you very much for being here on short notice, there is no other person who we can talk to about this particular matter, so you are here. Thank you very much once again. So let me get to the topic straight away. ENICs. Now, though the younger generation or people who have read about this might understand what an ENIC is, to the layman, to the people who do not understand, is if I am to ask you for an explanation as to what an ENIC is, what is the answer you can give me?
Well, as the name suggests, Chatu, that ENIC is an Electronic National Identity Card. Now, if you look at the developed countries in the world, European Union, perhaps not the United States, but there are other countries as well, they employ this some kind of citizen identification documents that are in a digitized form. So that is what we call a ENIC. So in a layman's term, it is the same NIC card that you have, that is with you, but it is in a digital way. So it could be on your mobile phone, it could be on your laptop, it could be in any cyberspace that you want it to be. And the importance would be of a situation like that is that this then is verifiable across the board.
Right.
Now we know, for example, if you go to let's say renew your revenue license, let's say, there might be a requirement for you to give your NIC. However, again, if you go to, let's say, a bank and you are going to start a bank account, again you are required to give your NIC. So imagine a situation where you don't have to do that, you don't have to carry your NIC with you all the time, and across the board there is a way of verifying who you are, who Chaturanga is, probably just by a biometric or some other thing that you carry along with you. Most of the time it is your fingerprint. Now, usually our neighboring country, India, has employed a similar system called the Aadhaar system.
Aadhaar card, yeah.
Yes, Aadhaar card. So basically, that is where a person is given a barcode, and then the biometrics is attached to that particular barcode, and that details about you, your basic details, are stored. And for example, if you were to go now and create a bank account, you don't have to do any what we call KYC, know your customer. I'm sure if you went to create a bank account, there's a list of questions that they ask you, a list of verifications that they want to do. Sometimes they want your utility bills, so on and so forth, which is to reinforce the fact of your identity. But here it is very simple. You just go, put your thumbprint, and the government itself validates and authenticates who you are, and therefore you can presume your transaction. So this is just a snapshot of how serious it becomes when you have a digitized identity or a digital identity, or what we call ENIC.
Now, Asela, the other question is, one might ask us, the license, the driving license, the new driving license that is issued contains a SIM, an RFID, if I am not mistaken.
A smart SIM.
A smart SIM.
Yes.
So, can the license also act in this way to create that frictionless movement when it comes to identifying a person? Or do you have to introduce a new project, a new ENIC project to get this sorted? Can't a thing that exists now do what you're saying?
Ideally, from a technical point of view, all this should ideally be residing in one area. Right. So as one project, or rather one initiative, because then you have economies of scale then. Because if it's one infrastructure, if it's one cloud service, or if it's one residing in one place, and the validation is done at a central location, then all the other services, including your NIC, land transfer, deed transfers, even your fines, maybe your traffic fines, all of that can be merged into that system seamlessly.
Right.
So from a purely technical point of view, not other things not considered, I would say a centralized location for this type of authentication in a digital way, it would be the ideal way, the optimum way.
Asela, now comes the interesting bit where cyber is involved. When you want to store data, personal data, banking data, we always make sure it is safe. We always make sure that no one else can access it, and we always make sure that it stays safe. Now, here we are talking about an ENIC project where you are going to divulge all your personal information, including maybe your biometrics, to the government of Sri Lanka, which might also give it to a different country because we do not have the technology as of yet. Now, when it comes to that, where is the cyber security in all of this?
There are several aspects, a very good question, but there are several aspects here. First, you talked about the integrity of the data that the government collects. And also, we must consider from a legal point of view, if the government is holding my data or your data in trust, there is a fiduciary responsibility from the government to protect that data. Usually in other developed countries, if you look around even in this neck of the woods, even in the ASEAN region, there are data protection legislation that comes into being with this type of projects. We can't stop digitization. The way the world is moving now, we have to go, and this gives us an opportunity to leapfrog other countries also. And the seamlessness, the economic sense that it comes with it, certainly the project, this type of initiative is welcome. But my concern is twofold, like I mentioned. One is the integrity of the data, and how this data will be protected is another one. So integrity of the data must be ensured by comparable legislation like the data protection legislation. The United Kingdom has legislation, Singapore has legislation. So that is first point. The second point, Chatu, is a more dangerous point. You have state and non-state actors that it becomes a target for these state or non-state actors. I will give you two examples. Very recently, the Singapore national health records were hacked, 1.5 million records, including the health records of the Singapore Prime Minister. Now, I don't need to explain to you how much of a threat, even at a national security point of view, that is. So that is obviously because the data, the stored data, did not have the parameter security and did not have the necessary level of cyber security, probably against the attack that was happening. Similarly, in India, this Aadhaar that we spoke about, the Aadhaar records also got hacked. So problem is, there are criminal elements, like I said, non-state actors as well as state actors, who will try to take this data and use it for various nefarious purposes. And this is actually become a business now. You know, actually very recently I attended a cybersecurity summit in Singapore, and the main speaker there said that the Russian mafia has moved away from the traditional crime-related enterprises of drugs and various other things, now solely into cybersecurity, cybercrime, because it's lucrative. In 2016 alone, $1.5 trillion worth of data breaches happened. $1 trillion, Chatu. So you can imagine this is a very lucrative business from criminal syndicates and other state and
it's hard to track and find and all.
And absolutely. So when you put your citizens' data on a centralized system, on a centralized server or a cloud, certainly you must put in the extra effort to ensure that there must be a higher grade of security than what we are used to, maybe even in the financial sector, because your citizens' data is there. And the more you try to centralize that details, the more information a government entity would have of you. For example, you could start with your NIC. Eventually, as this system, let's say, becomes seamless, your bank details might be linked in. Your traffic driving license details might be linked in. Your land registry details might be linked in. Your customs details might be linked in. Your passport might be linked in. Would you just realize at that moment there's about 10,000 data points on you as a person, and that I can use to impersonate you online, and to do financial transactions, and to do bank transfers, and to steal you as Chaturanga online. That is dangerous. And imagine putting 16 million, 18 million citizens' records on that system. So the ramifications must be really understood and comprehended when you consider a project of this magnitude.
With that, Asela, we have to go in for a short commercial break. Stay with us. You are watching Biz First in Focus. Welcome back to the show. You are watching Biz First in Focus. We are in discussion with Mr. Asela Lanka, a cyber security analyst. We spoke about the ENIC project. Now I'm going to move on from that to talk to you about the security in terms of our financial sector in the country. Asela, if we are to talk about security in terms of cyber security in terms of the financial sector, places like the central bank, the servers of all these commercial banks that people go and deposit and withdraw money from have to be extremely safe. But we have heard reports of instances where money has gone out in other central banks, and obviously the central bank bond scam, which we are not going to talk to you about. But my question to you is slightly different from that. Now, we know that world over, security is taken very seriously when it comes to the financial institutions, but there are criminals also developing their technological side, and they are taking new aspects to breach in, hack, if I may call it that, and to take out money that belongs to other people. We've seen a similar incident happening in the Bangladeshi central bank. We've seen an involving allegedly certain Nigerian citizens, I was told. So my question to you is, we can't rest, can we, when it comes to security in the cyber sector?
Well, Chatu, good question, but like I always say, the bad guys are about 3 steps ahead all the time. I'll give you just one stat. Usually a malicious party, or a hacker as we like to call it, would stay lodged in a system or reside in a system for an average of about 146 days. So that's a lot of time, and they will monitor the traffic, they will identify the patterns, and then they will decide where to strike. So this is the danger that we are living in. The threats are becoming more complex. Obviously all the time we have to do a catch-up game. It is not that at any moment of time the good guys or the institutions, the financial institutions or the law enforcement institutions, they are one step ahead. They are always playing catch-up, and always the threat is evolving. We call it the attack surface or the threat landscape. It continuously evolves. Now the recent trend is that it has moved to mobile, because obviously cyber criminals are very savvy when it comes to these trends, and they've also identified that people tend to use mostly apps now versus a desktop or a laptop. Interestingly, you would have noticed perhaps in the last year or so, commercial banks in Sri Lanka also, there's a concept called branchless banking, where you're moving into digitization. Major organizations are moving into digitization. So you have all these services, financial services, on your mobile. The danger is the criminals are also aware of that, and they are watching you and they are tracking you, and you must have enhanced vigilance. Now, for example, back in the day, a desktop or a laptop, you would actually have antivirus. But maybe a layman would not think twice about doing something of the same to a mobile device, because why? This is my smartphone. I use it every day. But then that is where the threat is right now. And it evolves. It evolves day in, day out. And you see by the amount of threats that happen, you see by the amounts of breaches that happen, you see by the amounts of dollars that are lost. $500 billion in 2016-2017. The world collectively lost due to data breaches. As at now, 2017, they've crossed into 1 trillion. Ghana projects by 2019 it will be about 2.1 trillion US dollars. So that is how much we're talking about. So comparatively, what I ask the financial sector, or what I ask any organization that is going digital, going mobile, going on the web, going on the cloud, pay attention to the cyber security. And this is not something that your IT division needs to focus on. This is something that needs to come from a chairman, a board level. The discussion should happen there, because most of the time when we discuss these matters and when we go into matters of cybersecurity, we see that a CEO or a chairman would just push us to a GM of IT or a IT manager or somebody like that. But that's not where the discussion should start. The discussion should start in the boardroom. And if you do that concertantly and you have vigilance, perhaps you can save yourself. Usually in cybersecurity what we say is, you can't stop breaches, you can't stop attacks. But what you can do is make yourself an unattractive target. And by unattractive means that if you are not a low-hanging fruit for a cyber criminal, and if you require more effort, then they will move to an easier target.
Understood.
And that's unfortunately the mantra that we have to use. So that's where we stand at the moment.
We have seen several viruses that have been sent online. I think we discussed the WannaCry virus that affected the WannaCry program, if I may call it. Is that the right term to call it?
It's called actually ransomware.
Ransomware. We saw that in several countries around the world. We discussed about it as well. Now, from time to time, let me just simplify this, and from time to time we've seen messages being sent to us on Facebook, on Messenger, to say your video or your name and your video. Now when you click on that, that would create a ripple effect, and you would be sending some other people saying Asela Vaidya your video. What happens when you click on that, and what happens really? Very good question. Again, the danger here is not that you're spamming your friends. That is just the minor annoyance. But what happens here is, in fact, the mechanics of it is, once you click on, I think this propagated very recently on Facebook, if I'm not mistaken, Facebook Messenger. The danger, Chaturanga, is that when you click on this link, immediately whatever public or private data that Facebook has of you is taken away by a malicious element. Right.
And then imagine then if you have 500 friends, I get 500 plus 1, and it goes so on and so forth and so on and so forth. So I am literally, although on the surface it looks like a minor annoyance, I am literally harvesting millions and millions and millions of people's profiles. And these are used then by criminals. We call them now data brokers. Facebook has banned the practice as well, and many other tech companies have banned it. But these data brokers, just like a normal broker, just like any other broker, will use this data and try to broker with any other company and sell this data.
Right.
For example, I'll just give you a very basic example. Now we scour what is called the dark net, which is not what's usually in the World Wide Web. We go a little deeper, and we see, for example, a credit card would be going at about $25. If I pay $25 to a cyber criminal, I can get a valid credit card number. If I pay about $50, I can get a full profile of the person, all the basic biometric information, all the age, sex, all of that data, all of that for about $50. So, and also
of anyone.
And also, if you want to be targeted, for example, I can say, I want Chaturanga's data. Mere $100 would ensure that all your data will be with me within a day.
So all my data is worth 16,000 rupees.
Well, apparently.
So that is the
danger. That is the danger, Chaturanga, because we don't attach much significance to this, because we think, oh, it's a minor nuisance. But there is a larger play here, a larger ploy here, that you are putting yourself at risk in a wider sense, and that is what we must be wary of.
Asela, we have to once again go in for a short commercial break. We are at an interesting juncture of this conversation. We are now talking about cyber crimes that affect us on a daily basis. So we will be talking about this after the break as well. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You are watching Biz First in Focus. We are in discussion with cybersecurity specialist Asela Vaidya. Before the break, Asela, we spoke about this malicious software we find on Facebook Messenger, where you would click and then your data would get breached. Now, Facebook is in itself an interesting topic to talk about. We have seen a lot happening to the founder of Facebook in the past few months. We've seen that too was connected to data. Now, we know that this program is watched by a lot of business community, several key individuals, if I may put it that way. If you are to give a message to these people who are watching us today on how to protect, free cybersecurity advice, what would you tell them, especially when it comes to this Facebook and minor things that we work on every day, on a daily basis? We use Facebook every day. We probably use WhatsApp on a daily basis. Some people might use software like Viber, things like this. How can we be at least secure in these three softwares, applications?
Again, very good question. Listen, I would try to distill all this information into a few key points.
Yeah.
First of all, you are asking the wrong person about Facebook, because I have been an ardent critic of Facebook and how Facebook goes about collecting people's information, how unwillingly people's information is shared by Facebook, collected, and how Facebook manipulates people using psychedelic profiling and all that. So, but I think that's a discussion for a different day. Very simply, on a daily basis, you interact with social media. Key 92% of Sri Lankans are on Facebook. Of the 6 million social media population in Sri Lanka, 92% is on Facebook. We are essentially a Facebook country. So my key advice to you is, if you don't want anyone to know it, don't say it. So what I mean by that is, if you are going on an airport or if you are going overseas, don't put a picture of your boarding pass, because chances are somebody can manipulate that data and mess with it. Basic, if you want to be known, for example, let's say you're going to a seminar that everybody is attending, and you must feel the need to let people know that you're going there, fine, that's fine. You must do an audit of yourself, of what information you want to share about yourself. That is point number one, Chaturanga, because if you don't value your data, if you don't value what data that you generate every day, because don't forget, for Facebook, you're the product. You are the thing that they're studying and they're marketing and they're selling to other people for dollars. That's how they make their money. So you must be careful. Listen, if you want to let people know what your birthday is, that's fine. You want people to wish you on your birthday, completely fine. But also remember, your birthday is a security question on your credit card. So bear in mind, always, like I said, have an audit of yourself, have an audit of the information that you're sharing with people, and ask yourself, is this absolutely necessary for me to share this online? That is, for social media, point number one. If you do that, the basic thing, forget about all these textbooks on cybersecurity programs and all of that. If you just ask yourself that question before you post, click post, then I would say 2/3 of the problems can be solved, because it starts with you and how much of data you generate a day. When it comes to messaging applications, WhatsApp, Viber, various other stuff, if it doesn't look believable, don't click it. Now, I have seen enough and more times where there will be a ridiculous claim and they say, to watch more, click here. If something is, for example, I'm just thinking out loud, if aliens are spotted in Kandy and you have a WhatsApp going forward like that, click here to watch the video, check yourself. Watch the news channels. Is there something like that?
Right.
There are enough and more instances where people are being hooked on by very basic ploys like that. And this is where we lose our mind, I would say, not in that sense, but we lose the plot. Basic controls, for example, now somebody comes to you and gives you a package and says, Chaturanga, open this. Will you do it? No. Somebody unknown gives you a package and says, open it, and leaves. You won't. But why is it that the apprehension that you have in the physical world, you don't extend to a digital world? That is my question. Always be wary, because you don't know. There might be things said to you, there might be things forwarded to you. Always check, verify. And there are enough and more tools out there, webs out there. So if, for example, if you feel a message does not sound good, copy that message, paste it on Google and see most of the time, 9 times out of 10, they'll identify saying, okay, this is a spam message, don't click on it. Most of the time you will get that message. So then you're protecting yourself. You're not protecting yourself, you're protecting everyone else that you're digitally connected.
Who you would send it to.
Absolutely. And that's something, because even like you mentioned, a very valid point, you know, not only VVIPs or businessmen, but even you, there might be data of you that inadvertent you just give out. And imagine tomorrow you go and you find your bank account balance to be 0. Then this whole myth or whole ghost of cybersecurity suddenly becomes very, very real to you. And it has happened to people, unfortunately. It has happened where, you know, they have clicked on a mail or clicked on something and suddenly all of their financial details are gone or financials are taken away. So this is the danger. So audit yourself. If it sounds too good to be true, chances are it isn't. Very simple. So don't do it. If you go, at least if you practice those 2 mantras, maybe your life will be a little better in cybersecurity.
Asela, before we go into the final bit of our show, I want to ask you this question as well. If you go on Facebook, you see various advertisements, if I may call it that. What is your favorite soul animal? What Harry Potter character will you be? People tend to click on them and go on these questionnaires and find out what is happening, and thereafter share it for the other people to see. Now, when you do those, is there a security threat?
Chaturanga, I don't know if you and I are Facebook friends, but I actually put a status out on this. I said, the exact words I used, for God's sake, stop doing these quizzes.
Quizzes, yes, that's
quizzes. What animal are you? What is your spirit animal? What is your zodiac sign? What cartoon character are you? You see, this is, like I mentioned, just a front to collect your data. You know, knowing that your cartoon character is Donald Duck and eventually getting all your data stolen is not going to help you. So I would really advise vigilance to anyone who's watching on social media, especially Facebook. Please stay away from these quizzes, stay away from these personality quizzes. And actually this is how Cambridge Analytica got the information. The world famous Cambridge Analytica case. Cambridge Analytica had a survey, a personality survey for 200,000 people on Facebook. Right. From that, they gathered about 1.5 million, 2 million records of people, which they eventually sold to the US election, Donald Trump's presidential campaign, eventually used for psychometric profiling, eventually used for targeted advertising, and who knows, maybe it swung the election. We don't know. But certainly the importance of social media, the importance of social media within a democracy is coming into discussion now. So what I'm telling you is, be very careful. Like I said, you know, use social media. It has its uses. Obviously, there's a lot of things that you can gain from it. There's a lot of positives there. We must not be always doom and gloom. But certainly exercise a certain degree of restraint, and especially, let me emphasize this point again, stop doing the quizzes.
Thank you, Asela Vaidyalanka, for joining us this evening on the Biz First in Focus and talking to us a lot about the ENIC project, the cybersecurity aspect in the financial sector, as well as little things that we should know about when we are using social media and other platforms for messaging and social media. Now, it was an interesting topic of discussion, and I learned a lot personally as well, things that we do not know when we are using social media. So we will be joining you once again next week as well with an interesting guest like Mr. Vaidyalanka to talk to you about important factors that affect the business, social and other aspects of our country. I've been Chaturanga Porachi. I'll see you soon.